Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an incredible story how one mother's desperate search for water in the middle of a barren desert actually led to the creation of a holy city. We're talking survival, a miracle, and the birth of a spiritual center for billions of people. So, how can a single spring of water create a whole city? It's a huge question, right? But the answer, well, it doesn't start with some grand master plan. Nope. It all begins with a mother and her child left all alone in a desolate wilderness in a moment of just utter desperation. Okay, so let's set the stage. Our story kicks off with the prophet Abraham. Following God's command, he takes his wife Hagar and their baby boy Ishmael and leaves them in the barren desert of Arabia. This place, we know it today as Mecca. And you really have to picture this place. The setting is just everything. We're not talking about just an empty landscape. It was completely, totally waterless. I mean, for miles and miles in every direction. There was nothing. No sign of water, just an endless, empty expanse of sand. So as you can imagine, the little bit of water they had ran out fast. And Hagar, in this rising panic, starts this frantic search. She's just running back and forth between these two little hills, her eyes desperately scanning the horizon for anything, any sign of help, any sign of water for her baby. She searches and searches, but finds nothing. She's exhausted. And right at that moment, when it feels like all hope is completely gone, that's when the story takes this incredible, dramatic turn. So, just completely exhausted and defeated, Hagar goes back to her son. The texts say she was totally disappointed. Can you even imagine? She just sinks to the ground, basically preparing for the absolute worst, to just watch what she thinks is inevitable. And then, everything changes. The baby, Ismail, in his own distress, is kicking his little feet in the sand. And right there, from that very spot, a miraculous spring of fresh water just gushes out of the earth, right from under his heels. It's unbelievable. Now, what's really fascinating about this story, a mother and child being saved by a well out in the middle of nowhere, is that it's not the only place we hear about it. There's a really powerful parallel in another sacred text. Yeah, if you look at the book of Genesis in the Bible, you'll find a very similar story. It says that God heard the boy's cry, calls out to Hagar, and then, get this, opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. Just like that, they're both saved from thirst. So this one spring, which we now know as the Well of Zamzam, wasn't just a one-time miracle. It was about to completely transform this barren landscape. It literally became the seed for a whole new civilization. Okay, so how does that happen? Let's break it down. First, the water saves Hagar and Ismail, but then it becomes like a beacon in the desert. Word gets out to the passing caravans about this new water source. Pretty soon, this once desolate spot is now a must-stop place, and from there, it just naturally grows into a permanent settlement. And get this isn't just some ancient history lesson. That very same spring that gushed out of the ground thousands of years ago, it's still there today. In fact, people say it flows with even more force now, supplying fresh water to the millions of pilgrims who visit Mecca every single year. How amazing is that? All right, so let's fast forward a bit. Years go by. Ismail grows up in this new settlement, the one that sprouted up around the Zamzam well, and eventually his father Abraham comes back. He's got another part of his sacred mission to fulfill. So Abraham returns, and the baby he left in the desert, well, he's a grown man now. And together, this reunited father and son, they take on this huge, monumental task. They start to raise the foundations of an ancient house of prayer. And this building, the Holy Kaaba, wasn't just, any old structure. From its very foundation, it was meant to be something special, a place of pilgrimage, a house dedicated only to the worship of the one true God. Now, as they're building, raising the walls of this holy house, Abraham offers this incredibly powerful prayer. And this prayer, it would literally shape the spiritual destiny of this place and of all the generations of people who would come after. So what did he pray for? Well, he asked God to accept their work, for their descendants to always be a nation that's submitted to him. And then, and this is so crucial, he asked God to one day raise up a prophet from among their very own people. And God's response comes through. The house is established as a place of refuge, a place of security for everyone. And Abraham and Ishmael are commanded to purify it, to make it ready for all the people who would come to visit, to pray, and to worship there. So think about that journey. It all started with a mother's desperate search for water. That search leads to a miracle spring. That spring gives birth to a settlement. And that settlement becomes the site of one of the most important spiritual centers in the entire world. It's just a powerful reminder, isn't it, of how one single moment of grace in a lonely desert can send ripples through thousands of years and still shape the faith and lives of millions of people today.